Welcome back to another edition of The Story of Good Neighbors. I'm here with Lindsay Lauren-Visser, our Buffalo historian, and Brian Trzeciak from the Buffalo Maritime Center. We're here to talk about one of the most amazing American tales of ingenuity, and that starts with the Wedding of the Waters. So, Lindsay, I'll let you take it away.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's safe to say the Erie Canal is easily one of the most significant things in not just New York State history, but American history too. And the impact can just not be overstated. But when we think back to the time period in which the canal was built, the process of building started in 1817 and it went to 1825. And this really is a time period in which you were relying upon manual labor, right? And so when we think about the canal and the idea of connecting the Great Lakes and New York Harbor, it's so interesting because crossing New York State directly is arguably one of the most difficult things they could have done. But the reason they did is instead of going up and around kind of the way the St. Lawrence Seaway is, 1817, it's so easy for us now to forget, but Canada was held by the British, and we had just come off the heels of the War of 1812. So having a route that was literally adjacent to potentially enemy territory, would have really jeopardized the utility of the canal. So the idea of keeping it entirely in New York State was really just more advantageous for the entire nation, but also was super beneficial for New York State. So it was championed by DeWitt Clinton, and ultimately by 1825, when it finally is completed, he's the governor of New York. And he personally is the one who, to celebrate the opening of the Erie Canal in 1825, holds the ceremony of the Wedding of the Waters.
Alrighty, Brian, tell us about the significance of the Buffalo Maritime Center and what this meant 100 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. So this boat that you see behind us is the first, it's a replica of the first boat to open the Erie Canal back in 1825. And our founder, John Montague, had this idea back in the 90s that we knew the bicentennial was coming up, we had to do something big. And what better way as the Buffalo Maritime Center to build a boat that would commemorate this whole time. So we started working on this, and in 2020 we were invited into here because of the state actually let us use this beautiful place to build this boat. And we've been building it for the past couple of years, and we're about to launch it in May of 2024. And it's got a big trip ahead of it down to New York City in 2025, and we're just super excited about it.
This is so exciting. I was telling you both, when I first came to Buffalo, Canalside was one of the first places I visited, and getting to see this boat being worked on live in action, and people come from all over the country to come see it.
Oh, absolutely. We actually have a map in the front there where people can pin where they're from, and you can see pins all over the world, and that's been happening. But the whole goal of this project has been not only to teach traditional boat building to volunteers and people who want to be a part of it, but it's to explore that history of the Erie Canal and really open up that dialogue and that conversation. So.
Lindsay, back to you. Let's get more into the history behind the canal, because the Wedding of the Waters is significant as far as literally getting water from Lake Erie to the Erie Canal, right?
Absolutely. So when we think about the length of the canal, it is 636 miles from Albany to Buffalo, and at Albany it meets the Hudson River, and it'll take you the rest of the way to New York City. So this is a tremendous undertaking, and when we think about the construction, we look behind us, they're doing the very traditional boat building methods. Well, imagine the very traditional canal building methods, because really it would be shovels and hand tools and just, again, trying to overcome the geography and the topography. There's a change in elevation across New York State of about 571 feet. So imagine trying to get water and boats up and down and all of these things. So again, pushing the limits of ingenuity, they created the system of 83 locks that help navigate the different water levels. But at the time it was constructed, it is the largest public works project ever in North America, and it's the largest artificial waterway as well. And so truly it is just incredible what they were able to accomplish. But the idea behind it really was, by connecting the Midwest through the Great Lakes and New York Harbor, you could open up commerce in an incredible way. So of course New York City, being the end of the canal on one end, was going to have a huge benefit financially, becoming one of the largest ports. But on the opposite end, whatever city was going to be the terminus of the canal was going to have a similar boom. And while we know now it was Buffalo, it very nearly wasn't. It was very, very close to being Black Rock, which is just north of the city. You can still go visit that area, but ultimately it was a group of citizens from Buffalo who came in and dredged out Buffalo Harbor to be able to create a deeper water port to be the terminus of the canal. And that, in terms of our growth and our story as a city, is so critically important because the canal opened up all sorts of opportunities. And you know, for me, one of the things I love is that it just brought so many people to Buffalo. And to quote a good friend of ours, Mike Vogel, more immigrants crossed through the streets of this area than passed through Ellis Island. So when you think about Buffalo as a crossroads, we were really just an opportunity to move into the rest of the country, to go to Canada, to visit the Northeast, to move goods and services. It made Buffalo a booming city, and that culminated really in us becoming the 8th largest city in the country by 1901.
It quite literally put Buffalo on the map.
It did. It really did. I think at the time, when you think of 1817, when this would have been announced, 1812, Buffalo had been burnt to the ground. It was a small village outpost. It really was only 5 years later that they're really talking about making Buffalo this center of commerce and development, and that's all because of the Erie Canal.
And what are we doing to celebrate the bicentennial?
Yeah, so we're finishing this boat and we're taking the time to get the community involved and to understand the story of that Erie Canal, right? And in 2024, this thing is going out that big door out there, and we're going to pull into the commercial slip, which is the terminus of the Erie Canal right there. And we'll be doing some sea trials, just trying to get our sea legs, as it were, how we're going to move this boat around. And a little side note, I just got the opportunity to travel the Erie Canal on the C.L. Churchill, the tugboat that pulled the Lois McClure, which was a canal boat that came from Lake Champlain. And it was something. It was something to go along the Mohawk Valley and be on this huge boat and to hear truck drivers blow their horns and train whistles blow. And then you pull into these ports and you see a group of people waiting for you. And we're going to do that so much more when it comes to 2025 because we're going to recreate that journey. It's going to look a lot different 200 years later, right? Because we are going to concentrate on the collaboration of cultures. We're going to, this boat is called the Seneca Chief, and there's a lot of history involved in that, right? Why was it called that? And the idea of that is we don't actually know why, but we have an idea. But that was an opportunity to open up that discussion with the Haudenosaunee to say, where's the story with you guys in the Erie Canal? And the fact is, we don't tell that story. So what we're trying to do now is opening up that narrative, talking about the origin of the Erie Canal, the impacts that it had. And there are so many. Lindsay was just talking about them. But there are some impacts that we need to bring out as well. We're standing on native ground, right? And we should acknowledge that. So what we're doing in 2025 as we leave from Buffalo right out here all the way to New York City is we're stopping at ports along the way to have these discussions with people in towns like, Fairport, Pittsford, Lyons, Watertown, all the way to New York City to commemorate this beautiful thing. We will do a Wedding of the Waters. It's just going to have a different theme this time.
Okay.
And that is so similar, I think, even to the one from 200 years ago, because it was a process, and it started on October 26th. The boats left from Buffalo. They had 2 casks of water from Lake Erie on board, and Governor DeWitt Clinton, the big champion of the canal, took the 10-day journey down along the canal route with all of these towns coming out celebrating, shooting off their cannons, having parades, really embracing this new opportunity. They get to New York in November 4th of 1825, ceremonially pour in that water into the Atlantic, and then they refill a cask and then put it back on the Seneca Chief to make the journey home to Buffalo when the ceremony was completed on November 23rd with then Judge Samuel Wilkinson, who was so instrumental in digging out Buffalo Harbor. So it was so fitting that he's the person who got to pour the cask of water from the Atlantic into Lake Erie. So the whole story, I think, is is really nice in the sense that it isn't just the story of Buffalo and New York City as the 2 points of beginning and ending. It's truly the story of all of New York State. And even today, when we think about the impact of the canal, still now 80% of the population of New York State lives within 25 miles of the Erie Canal.
Wow.
So in terms of our growth and development as a state, this is just so critical to us, and it's so important that we tell that story.
Yeah, if I could add into that, so we are the Queen City in the Great Lakes. We are a maritime city.
Exactly.
And that's why we are playing that role and working with the community to remind people of that and saying this is a huge thing for Buffalo, like you were just alluding to, but to have people all along the canal stop and just to get involved and to get on the boat and to check it out, it's going to be an amazing thing.
Absolutely tremendous. Thank you both for having me. Let's get on the boat and check it out.